Okay. Are you hearing us now?
Can we hear now?
Okay,
there we go.
amazing. Okay, let's try
So
that
I
again.
guess we have to try that again. Thank you. And so we want to thank you all for joining us this morning on Let's Unpack That. It's so nice we have to do this twice, right?
Yeah.
and so you heard that's just now with To Be a Man. And that's the topic of today and next week, but more specifically what it means to be a dad in this modern world, right? And so we want to welcome you in Radio Land. We want to welcome you on Facebook, those that have joined us live. And for those who will be watching this replay afterwards, thank you for joining. And so we have in-house with us today, the one and only Firestarter, Latoya.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. In the system, Alaric, the feedback here is that we had some technical issues at the beginning.
Yes.
So we're gonna just play another song to just get us settled in. You know, we're here. There cannot be a world of technology without having technological issues. So for those who are joining us this morning, thank you so much for your patience. And we're just gonna play a nice little song.
You want us to replay that song?
Yeah, let's do that.
Let's do that from the top.
When it's nice, we do it twice. How about that?
Indeed. Let's go. And welcome back. So, what is technology without technologying, right? And so, I think we should have a good visual and good audio right now, and we'll roll right into it.
Yeah, welcome, James.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So I know usually I am the one who's in the hot seat, interviewing everybody. We've spent some time already trying to figure out technological issues. So we're just gonna get right into you introducing yourself and just shouting out to anybody that you wanna give a shout out to.
Excellent. Okay. Well, my name is James Benson, from Beaver Lake Cree Nation. I married to my lovely wife Sarah.
Yeah.
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 And I have 2 babies, and I am Indigenous father, and that means a lot of different things.
A lot.
Oh,
Yes.
wow.
Yeah.
I can just imagine.
Hmm.
Well, thank you so much for coming in today. As you know, as we had told you in our invite, and I will not share how I met James, because the reality is our connection is very, very different. I know you through your wife, but you and Alaric have a different connection. And so Alaric thought it was fit for you to come in this morning to kind of join us and have a deep conversation as we celebrate males' mental health. June is Males' Mental Health Month. And as you know, men have a different kind of approach when it comes to mental health. And I don't want to blame it on the men. I want to recognize that we as a society have a different approach to men when it comes to their mental health. So we find that a lot of our men suffer in silence. And so, again, I'm not a man. My perspective is very limited. So guess who's going to be the main person today?
Well, definitely.
Right.
So see, having grown up in Jamaica, right? And I find that it's almost similar here in Canada. There's this machismo
Absolutely.
vibe to manhood, right? And there are a lot of messages that we get growing up as kids about what manhood is, what being a dad is, right? I remember while I was growing up, my dad was out working a lot. My mom ran the house. My dad also had other things going on outside the house that affected us, right? And while he was physically present in the evenings, sometimes he wasn't really emotionally available.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
that's, but we find now too that that message has been passed on to us, right?
Absolutely, yes.
And we're navigating that space where we're trying to figure out what does it mean really for us to show up differently for our kids, so that what we probably now have as the meaning of being a man or of being a dad, we can redefine what that looks like, so that we can pass on that message to the next generation.
Absolutely.
So what does that sound like for you?
I'm actually quite lucky in a
Yeah.
lot of ways because growing up on a reserve, I actually grew up on in Calling Lake, which is north of Athabasca, and there was a lot of that toxic idea that a man does not show pain, a man does not cry, you know, chest up and
Yes.
just be
Yeah.
tough, right? You know, and really, I look at that now, and the reason why I say I'm lucky is because I was exposed to a lot of different types of things. That is a very I don't want to just say colonized,
Yeah.
because it's not just colonized, but it is a very cornering feeling to be raised that way. But the part that makes me lucky is that what I also saw was my father would go out and we would go out hunting, and we would come back with moose meat, deer meat, like everything, fish, everything. And although we would drive back home and sometimes we'd have 2 or 3 moose, which are like 800 pounds of meat,
Yeah.
we would come back to our actual house with 50 pounds of it because we would be giving it away.
Sharing it. Okay.
So anyone who was not able to go out and hunt, the elderly and any single mother families, those kinds of things, we would be taking it out with to them.
Yeah.
So, you know, I was exposed to a lot of the good with the bad, because what I found was the second we would leave reserve and go into town, that's when we have to man up.
Ah.
You know, it's like there's no village here for us, so we have to be strong and tough.
I'm glad you clarified that, because I remember when I was younger and back home in Jamaica, and I was learning about the history of Tainos, the Arawaks, and the Caribs. There were roles for men. Men were hunters, men were seekers, men were protectors. But at the same time, there was harmony in that kind of setting. So we learned about that very early. And I feel like in society, there tends to be an extremist approach now where there's an imbalance. So I'm glad you spoke about, you know, still having those protective qualities, but at the same time, leaning into the sides that need us to be functional in connecting on a more emotional level. And I'm glad you said the contrast is you saw the toxicity when you have to leave your community and talk
Absolutely.
about manning up. Okay, I love that. Okay.
And so, see, it's another thing that I want to point out, or I want to come back to, is the fact that you mentioned, you know, you got the good mixed with the bad, right? And often like as we grow up and we observe the world around us, right? It's often difficult for us to pick stuff that we want from our experiences, right? Because our experiences, every experience shapes us in some way, shape, or form, and basically shapes the way we view the world.
Yes.
And it's up to the mind and sometimes the individual, because sometimes we do have to make an effort in order to pick those things that we want. And I'll give you an example. While I was growing up, my dad was always working. He was always out working, trying to provide for the family. And that's one of the things that I valued. You know, in my mind, I'm saying, when I grow up, I want to be like that, to ensure that I'm always working, providing for my family, right? But one of the things that I also noticed, not just from my dad, but from the men in my family growing up as dads, they also had multiple women, right? Apart from their main person, they had other people, and also that means they had a lot of children from outside relationships, which affected our home.
Absolutely.
And so I also made that mental note in my mind that, listen, this is something that I don't want.
Absolutely.
Right? I want to break this for my family.
Yes.
That's powerful.
Right? I want to have one home, one wife, just with my kids.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so, what messages for you were like things that you decided early? This is what I want to pass on to my kids.
I actually took a lot of funnily enough, a lot of my lessons that I pass on were actually from my grandmother, because she was a safe person and she had such a large hand in raising me. She was the one that taught me things like, if a man asks you for help, you help them. You know, she was the one that taught me you don't look on somebody else's plate to see what they have unless they don't have enough.
We should sound it up for Grandma. We should sound it up for Grandma. I love that. I love it.
Yeah, my grandma Lena was absolutely amazing, and you know, losing her was quite devastating. But I remember the last thing I said to her, she told me, we'll be berry picking again, because that's something we did a lot when we were kids. And I remember thinking in that moment, because of how I didn't want to, you know, you're out and about, I'm at a hospital, I'm surrounded by doctors, I'm surrounded by other men.
Yes.
And I didn't want to show that vulnerability. So I immediately had to make a joke. And I was joking about how I was like, I'll remember everything you taught me, and then I said, even which berries not to eat because they make your bum itchy. And she started laughing and laughing and laughing, right? And I remember thinking in that moment, thinking afterwards, like, I really wish I would have said what was really
on
on my
mind.
mind and in my heart, right?
Yeah.
But I know she felt it, because she was the one that taught me that it's okay to be out there, put yourself out there. And you know, I was talking to Latoya earlier, and I had said my grandmother was the one who taught me that the best things in life happen to you when you're doing something that makes you nervous. And that was something I hammered into my kids. I said everything. You know, I taught them all of these things, and it's funny.
So if you're nervous, it's important.
It's important.
Okay,
yes.
got you.
So last night, my daughter, I was putting her to bed. She's 12. I still lay in bed with her, and we have like a I call it like the closing conversation, right? And she asked me how I was doing. I said I was a little nervous to be on the radio show today. And then she immediately said, Dad, the best things in life happen when you're nervous. And she made me go through a list of things that I did that when I was nervous that were the best things. And I was like asking your mother on our first date, and you know, going on all these things. And you know, it's great. But again, this is the community.
Yes.
Right? That's now my community. It's much smaller, but this is my community.
Yeah.
It's okay for me to speak like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then when I go out into the world, you have to be very cautious, right? And unfortunately, that is something that I have a hard time letting go of as well.
Right. That piece when we go out into the world, to not be able to like, sometimes we can't show all of that
Exactly.
out there, right? It's interesting because earlier this week, I was with someone, and I was explaining something like this, and we did it in the form of a drawing. And I remember me drawing a palm tree, right? Because they were asking, this on the outside that you see all the time, you always look so calm, collected. I'm like, okay, yeah. So I drew a picture of a palm tree, and I'm like, do you see that in the? It's a perfect picture of a beach day. Sun in the sky, birds flying around, the sand, everything is okay, and that's serene. And then I showed the person another picture, which is a windy scene with this palm tree holding on for dear life,
yes,
trying to hold on to those coconuts. And I'm like, this is what it's really like inside here. I get to share this with people who create the space for me to do that. But when they see this, which is the very stormy scene, they appreciate this a bit more, which is what I present on the outside, because sometimes on the inside, we're really struggling to keep stuff together, right? And when the world sees this calm peace, when they realize what's happening in the background, then they really get to appreciate what it means, especially as a dad, to hold all of that together and be able to show up for the kids, right?
Absolutely. And it's such an interesting idea that, I remember being small and looking up at my father and seeing this large man who took care of his people.
Yeah.
And being amazed by that. And then some days I catch myself, I look down at my son and he's looking up at me in that same way. And I'm going like I have to be the calm palm tree, right? I have to be that, right? So it's like, and there is this line, and as a Indigenous man, this line is incredibly scary to walk, and not a lot of men are able in my community are willing to talk about this.
Yeah.
We're gonna come back to that right after the break. There are about 5 seconds before the break, but I want to hear. I'm really intrigued to hear more about what you have to say, James. So thank you.
Thank you.
I tell you, we have so much fun on the break. We have so much fun on the break. If only we could go live when we're on the break, but it's all good.
Definitely.
Welcome back from the break.
We have some comments in our Facebook group. Greg is shouting at, it's too stressful to keep multiple women at one time. Tell that to the men in my family. They saw it as a badge. And he also says,
badge of honor.
Right? He also says, big up to Grandma Wisdom,
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
So thank you so much, Greg, for chiming in.
Perfect. It's funny. I'm glad that Greg brought in that point, because that's exactly what I wanted to bring into the discussion after you finish your point about your son looking up to you and seeing the grandeur, which is also a replica of you looking up to your dad and seeing that grandeur.
And my father, his career was very, very interesting. He worked in corrections for years, but he worked in a different side of it. He started off as a corrections officer, but he went on to essentially he asked the government for money to do a study on the prison system and to document gangs. And then what he ended up discovering was that our punishment system was not set up for Indigenous men and women, I should say, but for the Indigenous people.
Yeah.
Very interesting. When I was a kid, he brought home a man named Doug for supper.
Yeah.
And Doug was on a day pass. And Doug was Indigenous and French, and he had been in prison his entire life for murder. And he had brought this man home to our home to have supper with us. And I remember him being very quiet, and my dad just treated him like an equal. And this man was, up until when he died, he was always tried to make himself available for favors for me and my family, because he said nobody else treated me the way that your father treated me.
What do you call that? Your dad's soft spot? Soft side?
You know what?
The compassion.
This is what he saw because of the treatment of people. And so I look at that and I say, this is a man who tried to help heal the hardest and most, destroyed men in our society. And he, in my idea, I was like, the man was a walking healing lodge for these people, because he would give them opportunity to be treated as family.
Yes.
And I see that, and then I take my son and we're going downtown, and I see what we see downtown right now in Edmonton, which is, there's a lot of the homeless community, drug use and all that.
Yeah.
And my son, who's very empathetic, which I love that about him, he wants to take these men home. And he wants to take them home, and Dad, why don't we help them get better? And I'm going, I wish I could. It's
The
not safe.
intergenerational traits. As
Yes.
if that's not you, James. As
Yes.
if that's not you.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right?
you learn to have boundaries now, but as if that's not you.
This is it.
I love that. And I'm sorry, Alaric.
No, go ahead.
I was about to say that I find that with a lot of men who have that healing component where they are so invested in healing the community, often there are not many people who remember that they themselves need healing and they themselves need compassion. So they struggle a whole lot, and that struggle tends to come home to the family. That tends to be, that's where they get to be the palm trees at home.
Yes.
And so the family gets to deal with the falling apart and the probably absenteeisms or the drinking or the emotional unavailability.
Absolutely.
And so I'm happy that you're bringing that to the fore, because I always say, who pours into the water pourer? I always ask that. But I want to go back, and I begged Alaric to ask this question and the reason I want to ask that question is because I think Alaric is my husband. Everybody knows that. I always say to his mom that she did a profoundly great job with him.
Indeed.
And it's not just his mom. It's his
The
aunts.
extended family, yeah.
It's the
Absolutely.
extended family, the cousins, the uncles, the everybody. And so I always, every Mother's Day, I remember to send the message to remind his mom that you did a remarkable job with him.
That's wonderful.
Right?
Yes.
Yep.
And you spoke about your grandmother and how she, fed into your life and invested into your well-being. But we're also in a society where we're getting these messages that women are destroying society through our parenting. And yet we have these men who are stalwarts in society who were raised mainly by women. And so how do we strike that balance that, being a single parent or being in a role where a woman has to take on that dominance because we care so much about our kids, it doesn't also negate our strength as parents or roles or accountability to our children in ensuring that they're raised right with the great values that I see implanted in both of you. So that question is for both of you. I'm I'm interviewing you as well, Alaric, and
Of
then
course.
I'll throw it to you as well,
Please, you
James.
go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the things that pops to my mind right away, right, is that our generation, as you mentioned, has had that phenomena where there are more single parent homes, right, led by women. Of course, naturally, our societies, we're from African descent, the Indigenous society. It is still a matriarchal society, right, where
Absolutely.
the women play a very deep role. But we have been taught in this Eurocentric society, the patriarchal society, which I believe is where this machismo deal
Absolutely.
comes from, right? To disconnect from our emotions and show up as if we're walls, right? Without
Yes.
emotions. And so when it comes back to that piece, we're leading into women leading and women standing up and women imparting knowledge and ensuring that we were raised well, right? And we were raised to value others, value how we feel. I think that is kind of speaking to the fact that today's man is feeling the need to reconnect with their emotions.
Yes.
It's
Absolutely.
Powerful.
right? Is feeling the need to come back home to themselves. For a long time, men have been really disconnected from themselves. And we're feeling this pull to come back to ourselves so that we can help to heal the society in which we live, to heal our family, to heal our communities.
Absolutely.
Right? Because I truly believe that when men are well, society in general
Thank you.
does
Yes,
better.
yes,
Absolutely.
Yes.
And what's really interesting is going back to colonization. the Niheo people, that's my people. We held our women as sacred,
Yes.
and our society was successful because we held our
that.
women sacred.
Yes.
And uplifting women is what every successful society that has not been colonized
Done.
does.
Yes.
And so I've often said, like, we're seeing a result of this because I remember when my parents actually, they had been divorced for a while, and then they actually ended up coming back together
Yes.
later in life. But my mother, her experiences, you know, every day, those experiences in a society that holds not only women down, but single mothers even further down. So she would come home with, if you can imagine, I talk about a backpack.
Yeah.
So in the morning, you know, maybe she's carrying all the trauma of her life, but she has a little space for the day. And then by the end of the day, every time a man treated her a certain way, or something happened, and it was this Eurocentric society trying to put her in her place. That came home,
Yeah.
and because she was raised by residential school survivors, and she did not have a lot of healthy outputs
Yeah.
for that, she was spilling that into her kids, right? And I don't blame anybody for that.
Right.
You know, this is how it, like, the colonization has
Yeah.
leached its way into everything.
Yes.
And so one of the things that's really interesting is that we're seeing now a lot of the younger generation of Indigenous people, Indigenous men, who are embracing a sacred bundle that is original, that
Yes.
is a modern version of what it means to be a traditional Indigenous man. And I know
Yes.
those things, they're not mutually exclusive, right?
Right.
Like,
Right.
so what we're seeing is at powwow, which is a huge ceremony and a big part of our year. I love powwow. I love the
Yes.
food. I love the dances. I love the symbolism.
Let's
I
sound
love
the horn for powwow.
yeah. So and it's for everyone. It's not just for Indigenous people.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I bring friends from all different walks of life to
Yeah.
powwow to experience it.
June 21st is coming up.
That's right, absolutely. But what's really interesting is we're seeing a lot of the older powwow MCs are being called out because they have been colonized and they have that toxic masculinity, and so they're making jokes that are very, like, it's that idea, like, take my wife, please. You know, that like old joke where they're constantly like. And meanwhile, we're going like, no, that's a very colonized way to look at it. It's a
Yeah.
mindset that we don't need here during ceremony. We don't need this during our events.
Right.
You know, and I think that what's important is a lot of young men need to start calling this out of not just their peers, but also their elders.
Oh, that's deep.
Because and it's scary, especially
It
when
is
you're a
scary.
person, if you're a person of color or from any walk of life that isn't that Eurocentric walk of life. Respecting your elders is sacred,
Very
Of
sacred.
course.
Very sacred.
but it's so hard because that respect they don't understand can be easily lost.
Yes.
And that's why we're also seeing a lot of people of my generation cutting their parents out of their lives.
wow.
And doing that so that they can pass on the right things to their kids and not, like, so no contact is in there as well. It's a scary
Yeah,
thing, right?
yeah.
So,
It is scary. We have another comment in the chat here. It says, "What do you say to the war on the expression traditional man? Is it not misinterpreted?"
okay, yes. A traditional man to me, my Uncle Clarence. And let me tell you about my Uncle Clarence. He's been with one woman his entire life. He and his wife could not have kids, so they adopted the kids in our family and brought them into their loving home.
Oh.
And he was a hunter and a fisherman and a trapper. He was and just everything that to me I was like he's a living superhero. When I was a kid, he would walk up to us, and this sounds very strange unless you're Indigenous. He would walk up to us and he would say, "Are you ready to go hunting?" And we'd all be like, "Yes, yes." And then he'd walk up and he would go, "You showered in the last 2 days. You can't come with me. The animals will smell you." And it was like your little heart got broken. I'm 7 years old being like, oh, because you learned so much from him.
Right.
That was a traditional man. He fed everyone. He loves like he just is
Cares for the community.
for the community.
Yeah.
And that is a traditional man. He is the man that if you have a problem, whether it's with your truck or whatever else, he will come and he'll be like, "Oh yeah, I have that part. I'll go get it for you." And he'll go get it, come back, and that's it.
Clarence a bit after the break.
Please.
And so thank you again for coming back with us. We were hearing about Uncle Clarence before we went on that break.
Well, and it is quite funny because his teachings are things that I still pass on to my kids, and he is, to me, was the epitome of traditional man. I mean, this is a man who helped everyone.
Yeah.
And so that's what I think of when I think of traditional man. And I think a lot of people need to change the scope.
Right.
That's really important because the terms that get thrown around a lot, like people talk about toxic masculinity, and it is a very real and a very a lot of people build the foundation of who they are on that, which is really
Yeah.
Exactly. And what I'm hearing is traditional man is different for different cultures and traditions.
100%.
And something has peeved me for a long time, so I'm just going to highlight this.
Bring it out.
So I went to this Jamaican party. And I don't know if if you've ever been to a Jamaican party. We keep dance hall. We keep real dance and
Yes.
broke out and carry on kind of stuff, right? And we have a very live community here. Shout out to Sean Flavor and his parties. And so the last one that I went to towards at some point the DJ was like, "Hands up in the air if you know you're a man and you don't wash bathroom and you don't clean house and you don't this and you don't that." And it peeved me. It peeved me because I remember the days of growing up and the men put their feet up and the women did all the cleaning, and how that has continued to be imported into our culture in this toxicity where women should work and women should clean and women should do this. And it also sends the wrong messages to our young men that they shouldn't have those balanced roles.
That's right.
That there are pink jobs and blue jobs, and that is the tradition in my culture that I beg to resent. I beg to not employ, because there's one thing that I admire about my husband. I never have to say who's doing laundry. If I've had a heavy day, my husband, he's done laundry, he's cleaned the house, he's wiped out, he's done this. There are days that I can't move out of bed, and I'll get up, the bathroom is cleaned, breakfast is done, and I'm like, and that's can we create a new tradition when the tradition is broken?
I would love that. Yes.
Of course, and that's the whole work of redefining not just fatherhood but family.
Absolutely.
Right, where the stereotypes of gender specific roles are broken down. And we understand that we all contribute to the unit, right? So that we can benefit from the unit. Because a very wise person mentioned to me a few days ago, and reminded me of this 60-40 rule, right? And that there's sometimes when in a relationship, in a synergy of parenthood, where each partner has to try to give 60%, so that when the other person is not at their best, that 60% compensates. Right?
Absolutely,
And
yes.
I'm telling you, this comes right back to what we're talking about now, where we have to redefine what fatherhood looks like within the home, as opposed to what Latoya just mentioned, which is just saying, hey, we don't do certain things here, right?
Yeah. And to me, I feel like those people that feel that way, like if they were married to my wife would be like, here's a 1-bedroom apartment, live in your filth, and then come home when you're ready to take
be
on
the
your part.
family. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's like, shout out to those who don't clean the bath. It's like, but yeah, okay, go ahead,
Right.
live in your gross bathroom, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
understand that. Like, for me, I look at it like nobody should get to rest until the work is done.
Yes.
You know, and there's always work.
Some
And
work
as
to
as a dad of 2 who's trying to take on more responsibility, and I openly admit, like, I have ADHD, and my wife is so organized, and so I have put her in the role of expert when it comes to so many things.
Please don't. Please
so
don't.
It's now at the point where I'm sitting, even if I can't help her with something, I'm sitting next to her and I'm there and I'm listening.
Yes.
So if she's doing something that I have taken myself away from for so long that I don't know how to do, I sit next to her, or I'm standing next to her, or I'm helping her in some way. I'm handing her something.
What a powerful message for the kids.
And that's exactly it. It's like, if you don't know how to do something, sit
Yeah.
with the person who does and learn.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
You know,
No
and it's-
excuse, right?
There's no
Right.
excuse.
Try
right?
to learn.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
That's an amazing,
In the break-
amazing lesson.
in the break
during
we
the
had
break-
talked- yeah.
Oh yeah, during
Yeah.
the break there was something that was very important that came up, and you know these like during the breaks are some really great times if people could just hear what happens during the break. But you brought up something which was very important in terms of how we try to ensure that our kids get the best version of us. You shared a
The
quote.
fallen soldiers.
Right.
Yes. So I was part of a group online called Fallen Fathers, and unfortunately it did track a lot of men who have lost the battle with mental health. And one of the quotes that to me is very, very powerful is, because men don't talk about it because they're worried about burdening other
Yes.
people. And all of these guys were saying the same thing. They were saying, I would rather carry the burden of your tears than the weight of your casket. And that is it's so important to hammer into the heads of the men around you that, like, it's okay to check in and be honest. I would rather call my friend and say, how are you? And they say, like, I'm fine. Why do you ask?
Yeah.
Than me not call in and then wish I had when it's too late. Right? And, you know, men's mental health is very, very, it's just washed over.
It is.
You know, it really honestly is, because when my daughter was born, she was very, very sick. And one of the things that I hold close to my heart that I really struggled with afterwards was men would come up to me when they'd hear the story and they would say, how is Sarah doing?
Never asked how you're
Never
doing.
Never asked me
asked.
how I'm doing.
Yes.
How is Sarah doing?
Yes.
How's the baby? How's
Yeah.
everybody else?
Yeah.
That is so profound.
And for me, I'm like, so you're thrust into that role. You're not in your village.
Yeah.
You're thrust into that role where you're man up, pound your chest,
Yeah.
flex your muscles, and
Yep.
you know, you just turn on the
Bruton.
barbecue, open up
Yeah.
a beer, and pretend nothing else is going on. No.
yes.
You know, like, no more of this. Like, we need to
Yes.
start talking about this.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like,
Definitely.
So, oh my God, time is
Time
never
flies.
enough. Oh my gosh, time is never enough. But I think the whole gist of what we got from you today, and from you as well, Eric, as we put you in the hot seat to kind of share your own personal experiences, is that men don't have to suffer in silence.
no.
And that, you know, we can redefine what masculinity looks like to benefit not only ourselves but also our families, right?
Yeah.
And also society. And I love what Alric said about, having that pull, wanting to heal so that we can heal ourselves, our family, and society on large, but also recognizing the disparity from the colonial perspective, that it asks for a patriarchal perspective, worldview that continues to cause damage, but also recognizing that the matriarchal perspective is still also quite relevant to how we navigate this world. And so we're gonna be closing off today's segment, but we didn't want to close off without giving you the opportunity to just shout out. June 21st is National Indigenous Peoples Day.
Absolutely,
and,
yes.
we're just giving you a free segment to just speak about that, invite us to any events that are happening. And we thank you for being on the show. We're closing off with you and Alric. Before you, James, I'm so sorry. Alric, any announcements or anything for the weekend segment before we close off with James?
We'll let James do his, and then I'll close off. I'm interested to hear. Go ahead, James.
Well, every year in the past for Indigenous Peoples Day, I've actually volunteered at my son's school. And I've taken the entirety of the school body, and I've taken them through walks. We're very, very lucky where his school is. We have River Valley right there, and I take them through and I talk about legends, creation stories, and I talk about the importance of water.
Yeah.
And all of these traditional ideas. And every year it's been a great success, and I just enjoy so much the teaching kids who, especially urban, right, who have never been in camp, up to camp, or do these traditional things. And it's very important to me that I get to walk out there with people. And what's really interesting is I am seeing such a positive reaction in my neighborhood because these same kids are like, that's the guy, that's the guy who taught us about, I taught them how to make glue, leather glue from pine sap and charcoal, and all of these traditional things that I was taught how to do by Uncle Clarence, by Grandma Lena, all of these things. So in that way, I'm trying to pass that
on to the next generation.
Absolutely. So, and powwow season's coming up, right? And for me, I tell everybody that will listen, Poundmaker's Powwow.
Yeah.
It's just in between Edmonton and St. Albert.
Buffalo.
Yeah, and it's absolutely a wonderful day. Best lemonade you're ever going to have is made there. Best bannock burgers you're ever going to have are made there. So it is a wonderful time. And if you see me out there, don't be afraid to come up and say hi. Woo! I would love to talk to you. I will talk your ear off the whole day.
We'd love to have you to talk our ears off, because this has been an amazing segment. We want to thank you so much for coming in. James, Latoya's gone to help our next segment host into the building. And so thank you so much for riding with us this morning, everyone. Males' mental health is not normally highlighted, as we said. And dads being in the home, it's important for us to pay attention to that, so that we can destigmatize that, bring that home, so that we can show up for our families, ensure that we're not passing on that message to the next generation, and ensuring that they have the foundation to stand on to continue cascading this to theirs as well. So up next on my radio 580 AM, we have the Latin Hour with Miss Laura. We also are back this weekend with the next 48 with Special K. Greg is off on vacation. So on Saturday, the weekend morning show, Danny will be in the house. And then we will be back next week for part 2 of this Father's Day special, where we have another special guest coming in to share with us, breaking down the stigma around mental health, and especially where dads are concerned. Thank you for riding us and riding with us. And to take us out, we will have a song here from Keith Urban, Song for Dad. See you next week.